Following the rave reviews for AEW All In Texas, AEW follows up with Forbidden Door 2025. The first Forbidden Door I actually haven't attended live, but it was a good show. And it was a different show from the prior Forbidden Door shows. And we're going to talk about that in this video. So the main thing I want to get across here, though, going into the show, how the show was set up, Forbidden Door was originally concepted as a clash between New Japan Pro Wrestling and AEW, a celebration of those two promotions that were the other side of the pro wrestling coin. And at the time, it was a unique event. It was something that we all wanted to see. It's something that had years of build towards it. And the first couple of shows were unique. They didn't quite do all the things that we wanted them to do. There's a lot of scheduling conflicts around getting two promotions who have their own yearly schedules to be able to do a co-branded show. There's a lot of New Japan talent, a lot of matchups that we still have yet to see and never got to see between. I'm still waiting for my Toru Yano Orange Cassidy match, and I don't think that's ever going to happen. But this is, and I wanted the House of Torture versus the House of Black. That's not going to happen. So there's stuff that is not quite right about how they set up this partnership, especially to do the Forbidden Door shows. And we're going to mention that here with the main event and Gabe Kidd, and they still do not acknowledge him as the IWGP Global Heavyweight Champion, which is the second highest championship in New Japan. There's a lot of controversy about Gabe Kidd not being in the G1. He pulled out because he hyperextended his knee. But the very next week after the G1 ends, he didn't show up for the finals to even do it. He was supposed to do an angle, I guess, with Shingo Takagi to set up their title match coming up in September. But he wasn't there. But the next week, he's doing the AEW show. And, a lot of eyeballs were on Gabe Kidd and how he came out. He did a spot off the top of the cage, crashing through two tables with Darby Allin. And I think at that point in time, there were a lot of New Japan fans that looked at this dude, and if he was having problems with them thinking that, hey, he kind of played us and to make us think he was Mr. New Japan, but he pulled out of the G1. Look, the guy had a legitimate injury. He was wearing a brace. You could tell his knee had been injured. He moved around pretty good. I think the implication is that Gabe Kidd sandbagged. He didn't want to do the grueling G1. He wanted the payday from AEW. That's the implication there. I can't say that's the case. I don't know what's going on. It could be just coincidence. But I will admit that I can see why a lot of fans have that opinion, especially, again, he did the most dangerous spot in the match off the top of the cage. That's his career, and that's his thing he's got to worry about. I'm sure I'm going to talk about it more as we head towards the Destruction Tour. I think that match with him and Shingo in New Japan in September is going to be probably more important than we might realize. But that's one of the issues going into it. There weren't a lot of New Japan versus AEW matches on his card. I mean, essentially it was Hiromu Takahashi challenging Kyle Fletcher for the TNT Championship, which is now AEW's third highest men's championship. Nigel McGuinness, who kind of, this is more of a British, because we were in the O2 in London. This was for the Brits. Zack Sabre Jr. is the IWGP World Champion. Again, a lot of people suspect, that's why Zack got the title and not anybody else when Goto went down. And he was taking on Nigel McGuinness here. There's no House of Torture in the show, which is both a good and bad thing. It's a good thing because I hate the House of Torture. It's a bad thing, though, because the House of Torture pretty much is 90% of what's driving New Japan right now. They're not on the show. The Bullet Club War Dogs were on the show. In the pre-show, they got squashed by the Ops. David Finlay, for some strange reason, is not involved with this, and that's a story that I myself want to look into, and I will do a video if I find out anything, if I can dig up anything. There's not a lot being talked about it, I don't see. So I'm gonna go look that up. It's very weird that all the War Dogs were at this show except Finlay, who just introduced 2 new members to the War Dogs over in Japan. I'm not sure what's going on here. I know what it looks like to a lot of fans, but we'll have to wait on that speculation. Other things going into this show, were the storylines from AEW, and that was the main crux of the show. And I do think it's probably best for this show now to be mostly another AEW pay-per-view that advances their overall yearly angles. But I do think you should have at least 3 or 4 marquee matches in the middle of the card that are a New Japan character going up against an AEW character. And again, I think it's incumbent upon New Japan and AEW to figure out how to get more of AEW's fans familiar with some of the New Japan guys, and vice versa on the other side. Although the reason why AEW has the advantage there is because most of the guys who are in AEW's main event scene, the New Japan fans are already familiar with because they were New Japan's main event scene. So it is lopsided in that way. Other things happen coming into the show. Great match with Kazuchika Okada and Swerve Strickland for the Unified Championship. I was looking forward to. It wasn't as great as I thought it was going to be. The unfortunate thing coming out of that is Swerve Strickland apparently is injured, but Okada looked dominant. And after the match, we reintroduced Wardlow, who hadn't been around for a very long time. He is now a member of the Don Callis family, and they also brought in and finally announced that Konosuke Takeshita just won the G1 championship over in New Japan. So the Don Callis family is the strongest it has ever been. And I would say at this point in time, this scene here after Okada cleanly beat Swerve Strickland and apparently has put him on the shelf, kayfabe and shoot, the Don Callis family is now the faction, the heel faction in All Elite Wrestling. So I do think that was established on this night. Another surprise return was Jamie Hayter, who came back to AEW at Forbidden Door. I love this thing that they've got with Pina Amanada and Tekla, who were apparently have been fighting since the 0 hour pre-show. They continue to fight out in the middle of the pay-per-view, and that's when we get Jamie Hayter making her big return again. This is in the O2 in London. Speaking of the O2 in London, AEW doing the numbers thing that WWE does. They had a record crowd for a wrestling show at the O2. Congratulations to them. I'm not big on these numbers things because we all know that the numbers are massaged, and it doesn't really matter to me anyway, because is the show good or is it not good? Yeah, it's enhanced. But yeah, having a big crowd, that's awesome. That makes the show a little bit better, but worry more about making the shows good and stop with the number stuff. I'm talking to all wrestling companies. I don't really care. So, but that's just me. But they're not going to stop doing it, and a lot of fans do care about it. So that's just my thing. I wish they would stop doing it, but I realize they're not going to because people live and die by that stuff. Outside of that, the only other negative I can think of on the show, or something that kind of put me off, the finish to the Tag Team Championship match between the Hurt Syndicate defending against Brodito and FTR. That was overbooked, overcooked, and they botched the finish. The match up until that point where these mysterious New Japan wrestlers and New Japan track shoots that turned out to be Ricochet and the Gates of Agony, who attacked the Hurt Syndicate in the middle of the match, that was badly cooked. The reveal of Ricochet, and it happened while there was a near fall going on in the ring, so the crowd didn't know which direction to look at, which thing to react to. That was poorly timed, badly done. And again, like I said, up until that point, the match looked like it was going to be one of the best of the night. Brody King finally squared off against Bobby Lashley, something I've been waiting for a long time. That was freaking awesome. FTR doing a great job of playing the heels in here, playing up that whole thing that the Hurt Syndicate has said about the top teams in AEW ducking them. FTR being one of those teams, and they literally ducked the Hurt Syndicate in the middle of this match. Bandito and Brody King. Brodito is become the Cinderella tag team in like a 3-week period of time. They are one of the most beloved tag teams in the business right now, and it's only fitting that they did win the tag team championships. I was a bit surprised by that. Really protected the Hurt Syndicate because the Hurt Syndicate was fighting in the back and fought to the back against Ricochet and the Gates of Agony. That ties in that when Ricochet months and months and months ago, when the Hurt Syndicate first came to AEW, he was trying to get into the Hurt Syndicate and they rejected him. So there is that little tie in there, but that was very poorly executed. I get it. It's a way for the Hurt Syndicate to save face and not lose the championships because they didn't get pinned. They weren't even in the ring when they lost the championships, and you know they're going to be pissed about that, so we're going to get a rematch. AEW's women's division is fantastic. They've got their big three right now. Their big three appear to be Toni Storm, Mercedes Moné, and Athena. They kind of put in that realm with the three of them. So those are your three top women in AEW right now. And the fact that AEW women's division has a top three now has a big three tells you a lot that division has come very, very, very far. There is now something also, and I think it's going to benefit their division overall, because all the other women on that roster, from Willow to Statlander to Megan Bain to everybody, all the other women on that roster, they now have spots to look forward to. Whereas before with the AEW's women division, it was kind of wide open. It's like, hey, you're a woman, you're a wrestler, go out there and do your thing. There was nothing that the ladies were really striving for. There was no spot the ladies were striving for. Britt Baker got it early, but now the women do have a spot to strive for. And Mercedes Moné, being the third member of that big three, she had a four-way against three wrestlers she had never met before for her TBS championship. The big news coming out of that one is Bozilla became a star overnight. I have not seen much of Bozilla, did not know much about Bozilla. Immediately her entrance, the mask, Vader vibes, and then seeing her wrestle, yeah, she's a female Big Van Vader. But overall, I think this was a decent AEW show. It's not the best Forbidden Door of the show of the year. It certainly isn't the best AEW pay-per-view of the year, but that bar is really, really high right now. So that's not a knock against the show. The bar for best AEW pay-per-view of the year is really, really high. So but you're going to get your money's worth out of this show. It was a good send-off for Will Ospreay in the main event. Him teaming with Kota Ibushi, Kenny Omega, Darby Allin, and Hiroshi Tanahashi. Hiroshi Tanahashi, the ace of New Japan, the president, and his last year, him and John Cena, their careers have been parallel the entire way, right up to the end. They're both retiring in the same year, and both of them doing retirement tours, and both of their retirement tours have some weird things going on. And Tanahashi, for his credit, there's one point in the match where Tanahashi's trying to climb up the side of the cage, and Ibushi and Ospreay are like, no, Tanahashi, not a good idea. No. You don't go up there. Don't you try. And Tanahashi's like, no. Which is funny because Hiroshi Tanahashi, for those of you who don't know or may have forgotten, remember when Omega left New Japan, Tanahashi was very critical of Kenny Omega's style. And there was a little bit of heat going on there, and that was part of what happened back when Omega left in 2019. That was Omega's last match under a New Japan contract was against Tanahashi at that Wrestle Kingdom, which means that Tanahashi probably also wasn't a great fan of Kota Ibushi style, wasn't also a great fan of Will Ospreay style, and certainly was probably not a fan of Darby Allin style. So it's funny and ironic that in this match, Tanahashi teaming with these guys, he then wants to do what they do, and they're like, no. Nah, you're going to break a hip, Tanahashi. You barely got to the ring. This team that Will Ospreay put together is essentially made up of a bunch of guys that are the epitome, and I think Excalibur said this on the broadcast, of leave it all in the ring, because all of these guys have had or are having major injuries. And Darby, being the youngest, the way he wrestles, he's looking at his future. Omega, diverticulitis. Ibushi, major injuries, concussions. Tanahashi can barely move. And of course, Will Ospreay, which is the story of the night, is going out for surgery. They're taking on the Death Riders, as I mentioned before, Jon Moxley, Claudio Castagnoli, Bullet Club War Dog, and IWGP Global Heavyweight Champion Gabe Kidd, and the Young Bucks. And the match was not the greatest one of these matches. Again, it was a good match. It wasn't, but we've seen the bar being raised very, very highly, as I think back to Double or Nothing and that crazy match they had then. The bar is pretty high. The last Anarchy in the Arena match, that was crazy. So this match didn't reach Anarchy in the Arena levels for one of these like all balls to the wall AEW matches, but it was really good for what it was. And we've got the grossness there. Jon Moxley trying to rip Darby Allin's ear out with a fork. I think Darby Allin secretly wants to be in a Saw movie. The way he puts himself in these positions of getting tied up to chairs and tortured, just calling it out. Ospreay did his usual customary dives. I did notice that they did a lot to keep Ospreay out of a lot of action. He wasn't going full bore, and I think that's the benefit of all these people being in this match. There was a good 5 minutes of the match where Ospreay was just outside the ring. So we know he's going in for surgery. They did the big surgery angle at the end of this. to write him off the show, write him off of AEW. He's probably going to be away for a year, depending on the surgery that he's going to have on his neck. The match ends, however, with, as I mentioned before, Gabe Kidd and Darby Allin doing a bump off the top of the cage through the stack of tables outside the ring, because Darby was chasing Mox, who was also outside the ring, which left it as a 4-on-3 advantage for the faces, and the faces took advantage of that. The last bop came from Hiroshi Tanahashi in his last match in London, getting the pin with one final high fly flow as best as he could do it. It looks like it's probably painful as hell to take, because all that weight is just, he's not bracing with those knees anymore. The impact is not on Tanahashi's knees anymore. The impact is on you, bro. And I feel bad for whichever Jackson took the pinfall. I think it was Matt. But that was the end of the match. All the faces celebrated. Ospreay got to speak to the crowd. He got to say his goodbyes because, again, he doesn't know, it's neck surgery. It's dangerous. He might not wrestle again. It's possible. I think with sports medicine now, I think Ospreay will be back, but you never know. So, and he doesn't know. So he's saying that. And if he comes back, is he going to be, he knows he's most likely not going to be the same wrestler he is now. So this is kind of an end of a chapter in Will Ospreay's career. Hopefully not his whole career. I'm just looking at it as him thinking, whatever happens, it's not going to be the same. I'm not going to be the same performer after this. This is the last match I'm going to do as the Will Ospreay I am now. So in that sense, it is kind of bittersweet. He had a lot of tears going on, and then they do the angle, which didn't work out too well. The Death Riders, in particular Mox and Claudio, attacked Ospreay after the match. Death Rider after Death Rider after Death Rider. They Pillmanized his neck. The faces all of a sudden couldn't climb the cage, which was a short cage in itself. It looked more like the New Japan Dog Pound cage, actually, more than anything else, which caused a sightline problem for the hard cam. But apparently they couldn't get down there. It took Samoa Joe and the Ops to come down to get them to raise the cage. But even by that point, the Death Riders had gotten bored of beating on Ospreay, and they're just like, yeah, just get the cage. We're done. We want to get out of here. So it wasn't timed very well, but the point got across. Even with Darby Allin barking at all the EMTs afterwards, going, hey, there's a board right here. There's a stretcher right over there. Like, they're trying to get Ospreay out of the ring. They're putting him in a neck brace. They're selling it pretty well. The crowd is chanting for Ospreay. He's their hometown boy. And I will say officially at this point in time, I know it's tight with Drew. I gotta say, Will Ospreay's probably the most popular British wrestler in the world right now. I gotta say that. The only other notes outside of that, the one thing I do want to talk about the Zack and Zack Sabre Jr. match with Nigel McGuinness is that it was a really good match. I love the variety of having a technical wrestling match. And the one thing I'm going to say, whoever came up with this idea it was a great idea. Technical wrestling has never gotten the treatment. It's never been explained to the audience. This is something I will probably go into at another time. I've talked about it somewhat before, but because the promo shine, the package shine has never been on technical wrestling, it's always seen as boring, probably because a lot of the people booking this stuff don't understand technical wrestling. It's funny, on this show, for the first time I can ever remember, there was a video package before the match between Nigel McGuinness and Zack Sabre Jr. that was a great explanation as to what a technical wrestling match is. It's a chess game, and it was shot beautifully, it was done beautifully, and when it was over, I was like, why has no one ever done that before for a technical wrestling match? Because wrestling fans are not stupid. We can be dumb sometimes, but we're not stupid, as in we can't learn things. If you present it and present a wrestling crowd that, okay, you're going to see something that's more like a chess match now, they're going to respond to it. They're going to know within what they're going to be looking at. The benefit of AEW, if it wasn't for that place, Zack wouldn't be on a show that big. You wouldn't see a technical wrestling match promoted to that level in North America, in the West, I'm sorry, that's just the case. You wouldn't see it anywhere else if it wasn't for AEW. And I think that kind of thing does help out, and I hope they continue that for technical wrestling matches. People need to find a way to sell it to the crowd, find a way to promote technical wrestling. And again, it doesn't mean everybody's going to like it. Some people are still going to find it boring, but at least you're going to have fans understand what they're watching more so than they do now. Of course, it was also the AEW World Heavyweight Championship on the line. MJF, Hangman Adam Page. There's a lot going into this match. All the controversy about the contract, and then Hangman fooled Max, and then Max fooled Hangman, we thought. So basically the stipulation behind this match is that Hangman can lose the AEW Championship to MJF on count-out or disqualification. That doesn't take place, although, again, this match is a little bit overcooked. Some of those issues that you saw in the tag match also appeared here. There was a weird 3 count that wasn't a 3 count, like a dusty finish, reverse dusty finish, I guess. In some ways, Mark Briscoe did show up, didn't really have that much impact on the match because the refs kept him out of there, or the security kept him out of there. I will say, though, that it was an interesting part early on where MJF and Hangman are standing across from each other, and the way that Max presents himself, there's a lot of Ric Flair to him, even his robe he wore on this night. And Hangman, a lot of people have said he looks a little bit like Magnum TA from back in the old NWA days. And I did notice it. I absolutely noticed it when they were in this match. I'm like, this looks like Flair versus Magnum from back in 1986. So there's that. The match itself is fantastic. Again, a bit overcooked near the end, but Hangman retains the AEW Championship. Max still has the contract, and we'll see how that contract comes about. So they're planting some seeds for how you don't know necessarily right away how Hangman might lose the championship. MJF is a threat, and of course we're thinking that at some point in time we're going to get Swerve and Hangman for the AEW Championship. Again, Swerve being injured, not so sure how quickly that's going to happen. Doesn't look like it was going to be quick anyway, because it looked like they were starting a program with Wardlow and Swerve. So we're a ways away either from Hangman losing the title, because I'm assuming the money match is him and Swerve. And even if he does lose the title, I don't think it'll be a long time before he would win it right back, because again, that is the match that you want to see. Hangman and Swerve, they set it up at All In, even with Swerve helping Hangman win the championship. So there you go. But overall, Forbidden Door 2025, I do recommend the show. I do think it's cool. Again, not the best AEW show of the year, but that is a very, very high bar. But I want to know what you guys think. Let your voice be heard in the comment box below. Until next time, I'll see you guys here for more news, rumors, and reviews on Rant and Review Pro Wrestling. Have a good day.